Vice President Harris was asked this week on The View if she would have done anything differently than President Biden that he has done in the past 4 years. And she said, quote, "There is not a thing that comes to mind." And she later said she would have a Republican in her cabinet.
Yeah.
And when it comes to President Biden and the presidency, do you see anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, and look, as a governor, I was asked to be governor of this state when Donald Trump was president and when Joe Biden was there. And I watched Donald Trump dismiss the COVID pandemic. I watched him drive an economy into the ground. And I watched Joe Biden and Kamala Harris pick those pieces up. And I think for all of us, we make decisions, we reanalyze afterwards. I think the thing that drew me to this ticket, and I think what the vice president's talking about, is that her values on these hasn't changed. They have been working for the middle class. They've been doing all they can to make sure prices come down. They're protecting reproductive care.
So it makes me want to ask you, do you think that Biden's done everything right?
Well, look, I don't know if any of us do everything right, but I can tell you he's done everything in the best interest of the American public.
They were saying that, hey, these are policies that Kamala Harris could have done 3 years ago when she was in the White House with President Biden, and she never did. What do you say to people who bring that up?
Well, Donald Trump had 4 years to do it, if you're going to talk about that. And what the point is, you need a partner in Congress. You've seen these. We've seen different bills that are ready to pass, and Donald Trump makes sure he steps in. We saw it around immigration, a bipartisan bill, widely respected, wanting to make a difference in this, holding true to our values, securing the border. Donald Trump steps in and says, look, that's going to hurt my political future. Let's not make it happen.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Once again, we got to talk about Tim Walz, a.k.a. Tampon Tim, a.k.a. Tim Pond, a.k.a. Tim Sugar Walz, which may be my favorite nickname for Tim Walz, okay? Sugar Walz. That's what I'm going to start calling Tim Walz. Sugar Walz, okay? Sugar Walz may go down as one of the worst vice presidential running mate picks in American history, okay? And that is hilarious to think about because the mainstream liberal media spent the first 2 months of Kamala Harris's campaign trying to convince us that Tim Walz was a great pick, while Trump actually picked the worst VP choice running mate possible in J.D. Vance. Now, fast forward 2 months since Kamala Harris picked Tim Walz, and it seems as if Kamala Harris actually is the person that picked the worst VP running mate possible. And J.D. Vance actually turned out to be a pretty good choice for Trump. And one of the reasons why J.D. Vance was a good choice for Trump is because J.D. Vance balances out Trump's strengths and weaknesses, which is not something I can say about Tim Walz. Okay, Kamala's biggest weakness, besides the fact that she's incompetent, is that she's terrible with the media. She's terrible in interviews. She doesn't come off as a very likable person. She doesn't come off as very relatable. She comes off as just plain weird. And the more that she tries to be a likable person, to be a normal person, the weirder that it gets.
As though it is a sign of weakness to have empathy. In the Senate, well, it was late into the night. And in the Senate, you walk onto the Senate floor, and there are these big wooden ornate doors. And those ornate doors opened. And John McCain came out. He's going after me. And I'm going back after him. I'm going back after him. And that was it. And this is what the public saw. And then I step onto the floor of the well of the Senate later that day. We had votes. And I passed by John McCain. And he looks at me and he says, "Kid, come over here. You're going to make a great senator." True story. True story. True story.
Yeah, and John McCain is not alive to verify whether or not that was actually a true story, whether or not that actually happened. I have my doubts considering how Kamala Harris also claimed to work at McDonald's back in the day, even though there's no proof whatsoever that she worked at McDonald's, and she's made all types of other wild claims that are hard to verify. I'm not sure if that's a true story, but regardless, this is Kamala Harris trying to be more relatable, okay? Because in the interviews that she has done with the media, very softball interviews, she's done a terrible job at answering just very basic questions, okay? And you would think that she would understand her strengths and weaknesses and the fact that she's not very good at these interviews. She's not good at dealing with the press. And she would pick a VP that would be extremely good at that. But fortunately for the Trump campaign, she picked Sugar Walz, right? And Sugar Walz is just as bad, if not worse, than Kamala Harris at these interviews and dealing with the press, which again, they're now forced to do because the basement strategy didn't work, right? So now they have to do interviews, and yeah, they both suck really, really, really badly. This latest interview from Tim Walz on ABC with Michael Strahan, who's not even a real journalist, right? He's not Shannon Bream, okay? Shannon Bream cooked Tim Walz, right? Cooked him up, fried him, okay? After the debate in which Tim Walz also got cooked by JD Vance, despite the fact that the CBS debate was rigged against JD Vance. JD still cooked Tim Walz. And in this interview with Michael Strahan, Tim Walz, again, is going to lay another egg when pressed on his lies, okay? And the first clip I want to talk about here is Michael Strahan pressing Tim Walz on the claim that he made behind closed doors about how he wants to abolish the Electoral College. Take a look.
I want to go back to something you said on Tuesday. You said, I think all of us know the Electoral College needs to go. But the campaign came out later that night, and they said that's not their stance.
Yeah. Well, it's not the campaign's position. And the point I'm trying to make is that there's folks that feel every vote must count in every state. Mm-hmm. And I think some of folks feel that's not the case. Our campaign does that. And the point I'm saying is I'm in 5 states in 2 days. We're out there making the case that the campaign's position is clear, that that's not their position. Their position and my position is to make sure that everybody understands their vote, no matter what state they're in, matters.
So that's something that you and Vice President Harris disagree on?
I have spoken about it in the past, that she's been very clear on this, and the campaign, and my position is the campaign's position.
Wow. So you see that, you hear that. Okay, so Michael Strahan confronts Tim Walz on a statement that he made behind closed doors, which is something that is not even really a super controversial thing to say in Democrat circles, which is that they want to abolish the Electoral College. Well, why do they want to abolish the Electoral College? Well, it's because the Electoral College is the only mechanism keeping liberal cities from essentially taking over the whole country, right? Controlling the whole country, right? Because that's the reason why we don't use the popular vote. It's the reason why smaller states actually have some say in the direction of the country, okay? And this is the way it's supposed to be. Our founders are much smarter than Tim Walz and the current day Democrats, and they knew the tyranny of mob rule, right? They understand what happens when you have mobs controlling the whole country, and that is why it is in place, okay? Now, Democrats are actively advocating to get rid of it, and instead of just owning up to what he said, right, he essentially doesn't necessarily deny that he said it, but he says, well, that's not the position of the campaign. So you're telling me that the position of the campaign is different than what you actually believe? Yeah, that is what he's saying, which is a very stupid thing to say out loud, considering how most voters, their issues with Kamala Harris, undecided voters, is that they don't trust her, right? They don't really know what she wants to do because she's basically been all over the place with her positions to the point where, again, nobody knows what to believe.
Angelo, just if you can ask briefly, you've been, a little bit leaning Harris, and I know tonight you raised some concerns. Why are you in the write-in camp right now?
In my opinion, the more I look back into it, the more I watch the debate, the more I look into her campaign, I cannot trust her. I'm not going to vote for Trump, but the more I think about it, the more I just don't know if I can vote for her because I just do not trust her. I'm more inclined to write someone who I feel like would best represent me through my vote.
Okay. So first of all, we thank everybody for participating. Absolutely no bad things to say about people who participate in these conversations. We thank you so much. But does anybody at this table need to take a deep breath? Because I do. I just do.
We've been listening to undecideds for weeks on 2A, and it's really hard to believe that there are still people who might vote third party or try to write in. It's just such a lack of understanding about the stakes and about why that's just throwing your vote away.
Oh my God.
I just have to say,
Yeah. So again, that's just a very dumb thing to say, right? Which is that, hey, behind closed doors, I believe things differently than what we say out loud, right? Again, just a really, really, really stupid thing to say in an interview, almost as stupid as Kamala Harris, saying that, yeah, there is no difference between me and Joe Biden. I would have done the exact same things that Joe Biden did, right? Just so dumb when you're running as the change candidate, okay? These individuals are the most incompetent politicians in the country, right? Bar none, okay? Bar none. So that being said, Tim Walz in his lies, okay? Michael Strahan is going to confront Tim Walz about all his lies, okay? And Tim Walz is once again going to give a really, really, really bad explanation for why he lies so much, while at the same time criticizing Trump as a pathological liar. But as I tell you guys all the time, Democrats love to project, right? If you want to know what the Democrats are doing, if you want to know the truth about the Democrats, just pay attention to what they're saying about their political opponents, right? Because that is who they are, right? Whatever they say about their political opponents applies to them. So without further ado, let's get into this.
Let's talk about your record. And you call yourself a knucklehead. Call yourself a knucklehead because you've made some statements that just aren't true. And the comment about weapons of war that I carried in war, which you didn't. You said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre when you weren't. You kind of chalked it all up to bad grammar or getting the dates wrong.
Yeah.
But your opponents say you lied to make yourself look better. Do they have a point?
Well, look, 35 years ago, got the opportunity to be in Hong Kong, be in China, learned a lot about it, served 24 years in the National Guard, passionately, in an instance, talking about gun violence in schools, on an instance there, proud of the service that I've done, proud to be a teacher in that classroom, proud to have been very public all these years, and owning it when I, said, look, I was there in August of '89. And I think what you see here, you saw it in Minnesota. I've been elected 8 times here. These things have been very public for folks here. They see the results of things that we pass. We see a state that's a top 5 state for business. We see 3rd best state, top 3 state for raising a child, and we've got the best health care. And I think the policies, whether it be dealing with China and understanding China's human rights record, what you can be certain there is that Kamala Harris and I aren't going to, pick dictators on speed dial. See, Xi Jinping is doing a good job during COVID, as Donald Trump said, and I think those lessons learned over a lifetime of being very public, whether it's in the classroom or being elected.
Well, but it's one of the things with trust. So there are going to be some people who say, we can't trust him to even tell the truth about himself.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I said they know who I am. I know who I am. I know the work that I've done. I know that things get spun in a political environment. But I think what they see is, if they want to compare that talking about immigration policy or seeing the things that Donald Trump would say, I think there's a big difference than missing a date when you're there. And again, spinning something for a political reason. I'm very clear of who I've been. I'm very proud of 24 years of doing that work. And I think going to Congress and working for veterans, they want to see it and make the difference, look a little different. I think people in Minnesota, my students, the folks I've worked with, members of Congress, they know who I am. And they know the policies we put in place have made an impact.
And Vice President Harris said that she told you to be a little bit more careful on how you say things.
Well, I did it, even the other day of just speaking passionately about these gun violence situations and meeting with these survivors. I've sat in the room with the Sandy Hook folks, a friend with David Hogg, who's been an activist on this. People know in that, and then that gets spun in that, well, he didn't say something true. It was very clear that I was talking about these veterans, very clear that I wear, I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I do think in these positions, whether it be governor or being vice president of the United States, you do need to be careful. You do need to be a little more thoughtful on it. And I think what you see is, as someone who's been in classrooms a lot, I've been around coaching a lot, I speak passionately, and I think doing that, you need to combine the two, and I think that's what she's referring to.
And wow. So basically, what this guy just said was that I'm an emotional man. That's what he said. I'm an emotional man, which is part of the reason why the Kamala campaign is struggling with men, because men don't see a counterbalance to Kamala Harris, right? We already know that Kamala Harris as a woman is probably going to be more on the emotional side, right? So you're going to want a man that's not as emotional, right? You're going to want a man that's going to be precise in his language and more calculated with the things that he says out loud, right? In public, okay? You're going to want somebody in there that balances Kamala Harris out. But this dude is basically saying, yeah, I'm a woman, right? I got a lot of estrogen flowing, okay? So I get real emotional. I get so passionate that I just lie, right? I'm so passionate that I lie about my whole life, okay? I lied about being in China at these democracy protests. I lied about the rank I retired with in the military. I lied about carrying weapons of war in the war. I lied about my DUI arrest. I lied about how I had kids, right? But you understand, I'm just passionate, right? I'm just so passionate about the issues. I'm just so emotional, man. I'm about to cry, okay? This is why I lie so much. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and these are not good answers. Who is coaching these people? Who is advising these people? I mean, seriously, you have people getting paid millions of dollars to advise Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and this is the result, right? In a meritocratic society, those people would have been fired a long time ago, right? They should be fired right now. Actually, no, they should not be fired. I hope they keep these people on board, right? Because they're doing a great job at helping Trump win, right? I have a hard time believing that Kamala's advisors are not on Trump's payroll at this point, right? Considering how these people are bombing every single interview. Like, you have so much time. You had over a month and a half of not having to do any interviews where you could have come up with good answers to these questions, right? But this is the best you can come up with. Oh, well, I'm emotional, right? And listen how dumb this person is, right? This dude says, oh, well, yeah, even Kamala told me that I need to be more precise in my language. If Kamala Harris, who also is not good at speaking, she's not good at doing these interviews, she's not good with her language. She needs to work on her precision, okay? She says dumb things as well, too. Like, for example, I'm the same as Joe Biden. I wouldn't have done anything different than Joe Biden. But vote for me for change, right? If she is telling you that you need to work on your precision, you need to work on your language and how you say things, that's a problem. That's a big, big, big problem. And the fact that he doesn't realize that saying that in an interview is not a good thing to say, it just shows you how incompetent these people are, right? I mean, can you imagine Kamala Harris and Tim Walz running the country? I think that's part of the reason why their numbers are collapsing. The more people see of them, the more they're saying, oh, wait, hell no. There's no way we can have these two in the White House. You have an emotional woman and an emotional man in the White House. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for World War III. Imagine this guy in the Situation Room in a meeting with one of our foreign adversaries, lying all over the place, right? Being imprecise with his language, getting emotional. Man, I'm so emotional. You might press the nuke button. Okay, I'm just saying. I mean, you're one heartbeat away from the presidency. And we know based off Joe Biden how important the vice presidency is, right? The vice presidency is actually an important job, okay? It has a lot more importance and significance today than it has in the past because look at Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden at one point, it didn't look like he was going to make it. And we still got a few months. Fingers crossed that Joe Biden makes it. But I'm just saying, it is a reminder that, hey, whoever's in that position has to be competent, right? Whoever in that position has to be qualified to be president. But see, here's the deal, right? Here's the reality. Kamala made the wrong pick. She should have picked Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro would have balanced out Kamala Harris, okay? And she would have a much better chance of winning, in my opinion, with Josh Shapiro, because I think people would feel more comfortable with him being on the ticket than Tim Walz, right? But see, Democrats don't pick based off merit or anything like that. They pick based off DEI, okay? And Josh Shapiro's identity as a Jew disqualified him from being on the Democrat Party ticket. So she went the DEI route of the white male from the Midwest, okay, to appeal to white men out there. And it ended up backfiring because this guy doesn't appeal to straight men with normal testosterone levels, right? He just doesn't. His main appeal is with women and weak men. This guy up here talking about, well, I'm emotional, right? That's why I lie so much, because I'm an emotional man. It's like, what? Who wants to vote for an emotional man? The last thing you want is to vote for an emotional man, okay? That's not appealing, right? You need to be stoic. You need to be calculated. You need to be somebody that people feel confident in dealing with our foreign adversaries. Again, that is going to be precise in his language and isn't going to be a knucklehead, right? This whole oh well, I'm just a knucklehead thing. It's like, come on, bruh. This jolly, happy-go-lucky Midwestern goofball is that like. Nobody wants that as their leader, right? People don't want their leader to be a knucklehead. They don't want their leader to be a goof troop, right? That's not what they want, okay? Nobody wants that. And they especially don't want a ticket with a woman and an emotional man, right? That's not what people want. So, it's just hilarious what is happening right now. And I think, honestly, you can chalk this up as a DEI backfire. That's what it is. It's a DEI backfire because this guy definitely was a DEI pick. He was picked for all the wrong reasons. And this is the result. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.